Welcome to the Mom Founders Table. Pull up a chair and join me every week as I become your thought partner and help you lead to create change. I'm your host, Kelsey Kenry, entrepreneur, millionaire mom of three, and strategic business coach for established mom entrepreneurs. Every week, you will get tactical guidance to apply to your business, leadership, and life that will help you further your true success while also being invited into a new way of thinking and being that creates true freedom. I'm here to call you out and call you up, so take a seat and let's begin. Welcome back to another episode of the Mom Founders Table, and today is right on time with my guest, and I was just telling her this before I hit record, but having somebody that is a specialist in marketing, especially somebody that actually worked for Walmart, which I definitely want to dig into today, is really on time because we just hosted my first City Girls event. If you're not familiar with City Girls is my private dinner series and mastermind and business scaling workshop that we are hosting all over the US this year. And we just had our first one this past week, and marketing was a big pain point for people. So I am excited to dig into marketing, and marketing is a huge pain point for me. So I am definitely going to fully pick your brain today. So I hope that you're ready. So anyways, welcome, Jordan. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Before we get into everything, tell us a little bit more about you, about what you do, and how you got into it.
Yeah, so I like to say that marketing is in my blood. I didn't have boy band posters on my walls growing up. I had Got Milk ads. So marketing is just something that I have always been interested in. But I started my career in the ad agency world. So I did the big city, downtown Chicago, big ad agency thing. And then I moved south to Walmart world, and I worked for Walmart and have done marketing for them for 9 years before I became my own consultant. I kind of stepped out of the career ladder hustle and really wanted to help mom business owners, make marketing easier, because it is hard, right? Especially for business owners that, never wanted to become full-time content creators and are now kind of having to figure it out as they also run a business. The way that I think about marketing is really from a brand perspective, which is a little bit different than a lot of marketers that you'll find on Instagram. But I really think about the upstream work and how to position your brand so that marketing is easier versus just feeling like you're constantly on that hamster wheel of content creation and just throwing more into the algorithm.
Yeah, I think it feels like an entire job. And I think for a lot of my clients, because they're experts in their own right? Like I have designers running design firms. I have, med spa owners. I have chiropractors. Like I have these people that are like doing their expertise, and then they start their business and they're like, well, fuck, now I have to like learn how to market. Like what the hell? Yes. I didn't sign up for this. 100%. And so I think I almost I want to dig right into on this pain point of I think the biggest issue with marketing, if I'm being honest, is that we're not taught how to market correctly. Nobody talks about messaging. But my issue with a lot of marketing people, agencies, is they're not doing their due diligence and they're treating people like just a number. And a lot of my clients, whether it's working with an ad agency, marketing agency, they've experienced this. So I'm curious to know for you, because you come from obviously Walmart, which is a giant brand. What do you do? What is your different philosophy, and how do you personalize to help people feel like, okay, this isn't just copy paste?
Yeah, I think a lot of what people get stuck in is these foundations that they breeze through, right? Because when you first start a business, they tell you to figure out your ideal client and all of their pain points and how to speak to them. And you're kind of just like, yeah, I'll do that. But I want to start making money, right? So you kind of breeze through the foundations that really position how you should speak to your customers because you're so focused on sales. And so a lot of what I do is reteaching those foundations of who you are and how to go to market and speak to your ideal customer in a way that's different. And I think a lot of people get stuck in the expression of their brand and how to talk about their brand versus thinking about marketing being the core of building a brand, right? So my philosophy is way more about how can you position yourself to differentiate yourself so you're not just competing with the loudest brand, that you are putting yourself in a lane that no one else can touch, right? And so it's interesting coming from the world of Walmart where they sell everything, right? But there is
Yeah.
still white space to be found. So I worked in fashion, and they own like 20 brands, right? And there's still white space within that fashion world for Walmart to create a new brand. And so that's one of the things that I teach my clients is how can you find a swim lane where you are addressing a pain point that no one else is doing? How can you think about a problem differently versus just focusing on the expression and thinking about marketing as once everything's baked, then I'm going to think about talking about it. It's really about working backwards and figuring out how to address your customers' pain points so that your product and your offer are addressing something unlike anyone else.
It's so true. And it's really interesting because even for me, because since I'm doing everything holistically as an advisor, right? Like part of looking at people's processes, we have to look at what their marketing and sales processes are. And
Yeah.
it's like you said, I think that these business owners, you go in, you're like, I need sales, I need profit, I need revenue, I need to just make money. And like you said, like I will come into these businesses that are doing seven figures, but they're stalled, or the way that they've set it up is just like, this isn't working for me anymore. And we're peeling back all the way and going through. And I'm even redoing, having them create like core messaging and creating messaging guides of like, this is what you need to give to your marketing team. And it boggles my mind that there are marketing people, I'm using air quotes for those of you that are
Yeah.
listening, that I'm like, posting fucking trending reels does not make you a marketing specialist. If you are not going back to these foundations that you're talking about and looking at people's messaging, and like honestly, fuck demographics too, because like it's
Absolutely.
psychographics, right?
Yes.
It's like, how are they
Absolutely.
moving in their day? What are their thoughts? Like marketing should be about emotional resonance and making people feel seen. But like, that's the hard part is like, nobody's speaking about this because nobody's connecting the dots of like when you grasp those that emotional resonance with beautiful messaging, your marketing actually feeds your sales funnel. And that's
100%.
like, so tell me like what why are we missing the plot in the marketing world? Like what is going on?
Yeah. Well, I think there are so many people that have blinders on, and especially in the social media world, they are selling you hooks, right? They want you to get views on Instagram. And so they are looking at this section of the business, and no one's really helping people connect the dots of like how Instagram sales turn into a business, right? Everyone's kind of working on these channels in silo. And I think that's one of the biggest things is that like no one's taking this broader step back other than like, if you get a business coach that's really helping you look at the bigger picture and helping you connect the dots because everyone is so focused on these quick wins and dopamine hacks, right? Because let's be honest, strategy is not fast, right? And so it is hard to sell a strategy that sounds boring, right? It is much easier to be like, do this, get 100,000 views, and then like you feel better about yourself, right? But strategy doesn't work that way. Strategy is the long game. And I think that's one of the things that is the difference between, the social media algorithm wins versus building a brand that is sustainable and is going to continue to evolve. Now, I think one of the biggest things is most like new business owners don't realize how much importance should be on retention and understanding the customer journey and repeat customers. And like it's mind-boggling how much of your sales should be repeat customers versus they're constantly trying to get new customers. And that is, the fastest way to burnout because you're just constantly on that hamster wheel versus the people that have already raised your hand and like you. So there's just
Mhm.
so many more strategies of thinking about marketing as a bigger piece of building a brand versus just, the thing that you tack on at the end of it.
Mm, yes, it's so true. Literally just like copy paste everything that you said. 100% agree. I think that we take such a short-sighted approach, and it
Mm-hmm.
feels like so much scarcity, and we're focused on, like you said, the endorphin hits and the quick wins and the, you know, going viral. And like I have said it so many times, but I'm like, the numbers that you see as far as likes and follows and audience growth absolutely does not translate to bank accounts.
For sure. Yeah.
100%, because I've worked with people that have huge followings that are making next to nothing. And I've worked with people that have like tiny followings that are multimillionaires. And so I think it's like somewhere along the way, we learned that like these vanity metrics were actually the things that we needed to transfer into sales. And I love that you brought up the point of like the reality of what we need is we need to be focusing on the long game.
Yes.
Like focusing on our customer. Like that's my entire thing that I tell people. I'm like, they're like, what's the secret? I'm like, number one, you never quit. Number two, it's customer service. You focus on delivering, do what you say you're going to do. Deliver to your client, take care of them, give them a great experience, and you'll keep them and they'll keep coming back. So I love that you brought that up, because it's also like these short-sighted approaches are a direct way to burnout. And I think that's where people are so exhausted by marketing and trying to find the right marketing things and figure out the trends. And you're doing all this chasing. So in your mind, right, knowing that you and I both have this similar approach of longevity and sustainability,
Mm.
what does that look like in marketing?
Yeah, you mean how long how it translates into messaging, or
I mean, if we're looking at marketing, we have the idea. You have these people that are short-sighted, that are chasing trends, that are doing these things that are pleasing the algorithm. And then we have marketing that's going to actually work long term,
yes.
that's
Yes.
sustainable, that's not burning out our nervous system. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think it starts with going back to the customer and understanding the customer journey, right? Like in order to get the customer, what do they need before they come to you? So what is the prep offer or the entryway that you can get people in? And then longevity, how can you keep them, or what happens next? So if you have a signature offer, what is going to need to be true when they graduate, right? And I think part of it's a balance of, creating these systems that keep people small, which I totally do not believe in. I believe in, like, if you are a coach, then you want people to grow and rise above. But I think it's thinking about where they are and what they need next and what that looks like for them. So if you are I'm trying to think of an example. I worked with someone that was doing products for like children, and she was doing these like templates that would teach them how to write their ABCs. And so thinking about like, what is the product beforehand, like how can they work on motor skills, and then like what is the next step. And so if you think about like, as someone evolves in either age wise or seasonality, how can you give them the next thing and anticipate their needs before they even know it, right? I think, there was that big thing like years ago where Target sent someone a pregnancy thing before she even knew she was pregnant, because they're seeing and flagging what people are anticipating, right? And so when you anticipate your clients' needs before they're even there, it becomes like you're already in their back pocket, right? You already are anticipating what is going to be the next chapter of their life and how you can serve them like no one else.
Mm-hmm.
Because also people are lazy. So once you have them in your world, like, it is so much easier to keep them than to get someone new. And so if you are able to handhold them through those next steps in their journey, I think that's the biggest thing that people just aren't thinking. They're thinking small, right? Versus the bigger picture of how you service someone throughout the different touch points.
Yeah, and a lot of people are structuring their infrastructure is built with so much emphasis on the entry level or the top level or top
Right.
of funnel,
Right.
that like then they realize, okay, people are like, I want a zillion more leads. Leads is the problem. And I'm like, okay. So when we fix the leads problem and that's translating and you're getting more sales, can you handle it? Can you and your team actually deliver?
Right.
Like, is your quality control going to break? And I think that's why I love what you said about going back to the customer journey, And like,
Mhm.
I will even have my clients do, I'm sure you do probably do similar, but like when we're developing messaging, looking at like day in the life of like when they wake up, like what's the first thing they think? What's the first thing they're grabbing? Like, how are they moving? Like, the more that you know them, like my favorite thing in the world is when I create a piece of content or write an email and somebody's like, "Are you in my house or are you in my head?" And I'm
Right.
like, "Yes,
Right.
I live there
Yes.
on purpose."
Yes.
You know?
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
like, okay, so if we go back to like if we've identified here the most important thing for your marketing is truly knowing your customer, being able to know like where they are. And that's what I say when I'm looking at offers. Same thing that you said here about like, okay, what's the step they need before? Like if we know we're bringing them into, a full design project, like is there something, can we do a blueprint analysis? Like what can we do that would be a step in? And then once they take that step, what's the thing after that? And so
Exactly.
it really is about anticipating needs and just understanding them. So where does somebody start? Like if they're like, okay, I know how to do my job. Where do I even start with like thinking about the customer journey?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is actually getting into the head of your customer instead of you in a way that you know what their problems are, right? And they either are aware or they have a symptom of a problem. And so I call this kind of like my french fry method, right? Like as my kid does not want to eat broccoli, but he will eat a french fry. So how can we tiptoe them to what they actually need by giving them the french fry, right? So you kind of get them in the head of understanding what their symptoms are and treating what they think is the problem, right? And getting them to broccoli. Because I'll have people come to me all the time and say, "Do you run paid ads?" And I'm like, "What is the actual problem we're trying to solve?" Right? And so
Yes,
kind of getting
we're the
under
same
the
person.
covers of like what's the actual problem, right? And like you said, like if are leads really the problem or is there something else that we need to better understand? And so I think it's like pulling back those layers of your customer of understanding what you solve and how you can see the seasonality of what your customer is going through, right? And how you can get in the heads of what their symptoms are that are facing them straight and keeping them up at night.
I love, I'm sure you have things to add to this, but I love like a feedback form, an inquiry, like an application, like using those things for like, here's a very like transparent moment. So one of the reasons why marketing is always so hard for me to hire for is because I'm really fucking good at it. And so
Yes.
nobody can ever please me. So like if I was an idiot that didn't know anything about marketing, I could be like, email looks great. Now I'm like, hate
Mm.
that word. That's the wrong placement. Like I'm
Yes.
so
Yes.
picky. But anyways, I love marketing. I think it's incredible. I think it is the tool in which we resonate with people and can
Absolutely.
impact them. And so at City Girls, we did this exercise that I do at a lot of my treat. Basically, I have every client write a problem on a post-it note. And then the other women offer solutions. Like, and so you get all of these solutions from different skill sets, different industries, all these things, right? So I'm like, I told my team, I was like, I'm keeping those problem post-its and I'm creating content from all those
Yes.
problems that they just said because it's their words. So
Yes,
I'm interested to
absolutely.
know, like, knowing that we really need to get into the minds of our customer, right? Like, so if we have something that's in our onboarding where we're asking the question of like, what are you currently dealing with? Like, beyond that, what are some other ways that we can get this information fed to us so we're not trying to figure it all out by ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think social listening is a huge thing. So whether that is in person at your event or just going on like what are people talking about? What are they commenting on your posts, your competitors' posts? What questions are they asking, right? Because that you're right. Like the easiest way is to use their own words because it's
Yeah.
going to be like, why are you in my head? Well, actually, like I use that.
I
But also like understanding your current customers, I think are a huge opportunity just to get feedback. Like, what was it that resonated with you? Like, why did you choose me? Like, I think there are so many opportunities where we don't ask the question, right? We just want to jump to conclusions or think like in our own heads of what their problem is versus actually like why they found you or what was it that resonated with them in some message, right? And it could be completely different than what you thought. So I love social listening. If you want to get scrappy, like go on to like Reddit or Threads or something and just like search what you're about and see what people are talking about, because that's a huge bank of what people are organically already talking about versus you inventing something that you think is the
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true. It's just like nobody wants to do market research, but I'm
no.
like, it's a thing because it works.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yes. Well, and like it's the time suck, right? Like it's not a quick win because there isn't necessarily like an answer, and you have to kind of take that and strategically pivot it and think about what that problem is and how you use that to guide someone. So it's not always like cut and dry, but it's pulling out the insights of what is the gap and how can you solve it, right? Which is why I love talking about white space and finding those lanes that people aren't playing in so you can have a different angle than just competing with everyone else.
Yeah. So how do you help people find that?
I think one of it is listening to how people are talking about their own business. I had a client who was like, I'm showing up on LinkedIn, I'm showing up on Facebook, I'm showing up on Instagram. And she's like, I hate it. And she's creating this in-person networking events. And what I told her was, well, this is why you have an event, because you hate social media, right? So it's like using your own insights for that language. And even I will do that for content as well, is think about like what you're actually going through, because that's where authenticity lies. You're not inventing something. You're finding a real hidden problem and you're addressing it differently than anyone else. And it's so interesting how I often will like talk to a client and what their like reason to win is right under their nose, but they're so close to it that they can't see it themselves, right? It's like that saying of you can't read the jar when you're inside of it, right? Like seeing yourself is so much harder than going and asking previous clients or previous friends, like, what is it that is unique about me that I do differently? Or like just ask the question, I think is like the most easy, like, and hardest answer, right? Because you're right. People don't like doing market research, but it is the fastest way to grow is to just ask the questions.
It's really following that model of like stepping back into observation so that you can speed up. And I think that's where like we're addicted to like just doing and forging forward. But
Yes.
like if we really think about where forward momentum comes from, it comes from like retracting, from sitting down, from planning, from having those conversations. And so I
Hmm.
love just hearing you affirm that. And I think one of the things that is really important right now is that since so many industries at this point, entrepreneurship is booming, right? A lot of people have
Hmm.
stepped into it. A lot of markets are very saturated, and there's a giant trust gap. And so I'm curious to hear from you, like, what are the ways through our marketing that we can actually build trust and help build demand when things feel icky or when things are super saturated?
Yeah, I know. I think authenticity is like the word of the year, right? We're like kind of like shifting from this totally AI driven world where everything feels like slop and everything starts sounding the same. And I think building trust is really about stepping more into who you are. And I think entrepreneurship has taught me way more about myself than like I've learned in the last 10 years, because you have to like be face to face about like what you're avoiding and what you're actually trying to build with life. So I think being authentic is embracing the messy middle, you know? We're going from this world where Instagram is like this picture perfect and I've got everything figured out and follow me in these exact steps and you'll get what I get. And everyone's kind of looking at that and saying, well, that's like that's fake. Like, how do I know that, like, wage claims or whatever are real, or like this is even copy that you've come up with versus it's been generated by a computer. And so I think when you are embracing the messy middle, embracing that you don't have it all figured out, people resonate with that because people don't want perfect anymore, right? They want to be able to know that there is a human that is going to help them and a human that sees the all sides of them. I think that's where I'm working more with mom entrepreneurs because they understand, like, if my kid comes in crying during the middle of a call, like, it's okay. And I think the more that we are able to put down the mask of who we think we're supposed to be and lean into who we actually are and what we actually care about, the more it resonates with people. And I think there's kind of this world where people are afraid of being polarizing or leaning too much one way because they want to, be safe or appeal to people, or just not isolate people from working with them. But I think that is actually pushing people into this bland world that is nothingness, right? Like, it feels very vanilla, and it feels like, why am I choosing you when you sound exactly like everyone else? So I
Mm-hmm.
think authenticity is really, it starts with figuring out who you are and what your perspective is.
Yeah, yeah, and it's so true because I think the more that you are yourself, also on the other side of that, the more you're going to attract people that are like-minded or have similar values. And it brings me back to this moment that I had with a client of mine because I've always really openly shared about my story. I don't know if you're familiar with my story or not, but I was arrested 3 times and had to rebuild my life. And I had
Yeah.
2 DUIs, I had a felony drug charge, and I started in entrepreneurship in 2011. So there was like this first peek into entrepreneurship and like where I was like, this is great. I can separate my history. That doesn't have to be a part of who I am. And I remember it was like eating at me. And then I just started openly sharing about like how I was recreating myself and how, I had just done so much work personally on myself and discovered like why I was making those choices. And I just started like almost using Instagram as my journal. And that was
Hmm.
actually how I built my original following. Years later, I'm working with this client to where like I would always struggle with like feeling inadequate, to feel like, because most of my clients are like highly educated. They're just incredible women, right?
Yeah.
And when I would look at my history and like where I came from, and then they're like college educated, like just incredible, right? And a lot of things that we pedestalize. And so I was talking with a client once and I was like, it's really interesting because I was afraid that like you wouldn't want to hire me because of my history. And she looked at me and she said, your history is why I hired you. Because I
Hmm.
knew that you would never judge me because of all that you had been through. And that was such a turning point to me of like, I'd always openly shared, but it was so affirming of like, it's safe to be who you are because people that know who you truly are, and if you get to be your full self, it's okay to not be for everybody, but the people
Exactly.
that you are for, you'll be that much closer. And so I wish women would be okay like with all parts of themselves. I think it's gotten a lot better, but I also think there's almost like this false authenticity to where it's like, I'm not crying on Instagram. I'm not going to do that.
Right. Right.
I'm not going to film my kids throwing tantrums, to each their own, but like I'm in those moments. Like that's my real life.
Right. We don't need a camera.
Right. Like the last thing that I'm thinking about when I'm having a fucking mental breakdown is filming myself. So, anyways, but I think there is a level of like you're saying, if we want to build trust with people, if we want people to trust us, we need to humanize ourselves.
Right. Yes. Well, and I resonate with that so much because I think I have spent my entire life following the checklist, right? And like,
Mm-hmm.
I went to college, I got a job in the big city, I got married. I literally live like in a cul-de-sac with a girl, a boy, and a golden retriever, is what I say. Like, I built what I thought is the perfect life. And I looked around and was like, this is it, right? And that's when I had my breaking point of like, this is someone else's dream. This is not my dream. And
Mm.
so I think being able to acknowledge like your past and your history and like what got you here is so important, and leaning into what you actually want out of life, right? Because I think, people can look from the outside and think that you've got this all together, but like, everyone has their own stuff going on. And if you're pretending like you've got it all together, that that distances you from people, right? Because people don't feel like they can be real with you because you are this Instagram, Pinterest mom that's got it all together and not like, things are on fire behind the scenes. So I think
Yeah.
there is like the vulnerability really allows people to connect with you. And like if people don't like it, then there's plenty of other fish in the sea, right? So I love that
Yeah.
sharing your story actually was what helped you grow, because I think that that is so true of being more authentic to who you are is really like the key.
I always tell people, I'm like, there's nobody on this planet that has the intersection of your skill set and your story.
Absolutely. Yes.
Like, that's your secret sauce. So, speaking of secret sauce, we got to talk about AI for a minute,
Yeah.
because what's really interesting, if I'm being honest, is I love ChatGPT. I think it's an incredible tool.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's like it well, obviously grew, everybody's overusing it. I have found myself backing off so much from it for a variety of reasons. And I think that like I prefer to use AI to, I need to be the origin. I
Hmm.
prefer AI to help me build on and or organize. But I
Yes,
think a lot of people are leaning on it to be the origin, especially when it comes to marketing.
for
And
sure.
like I have such ick now, even like as my I actually parted ways with my CMO recently because everything was being curated from AI and it
Yeah.
was a problem, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, I can't, like I've built, this is like half my life I've spent building like my voice and my brand. I cannot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear from you because I know that there's this balance of like efficiency and time, and like I know that it does have a place
Hmm.
in marketing, but what is your opinion on this?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've got like all kinds of friends on the spectrum in terms of like AI is the worst thing. Like we're not using it, to like people that are like turned into like faceless accounts that have like created these AI isms that they're, yeah. So there, it's definitely a fine balance. But I think like what you're saying is we have to use it to speed up. We can't ignore it, right? It's like the internet when everyone thought like this is like your like libraries are going to disappear because no one's going to do research. Like it's not the world is falling down. I think we just have to figure out how to use it strategically. And you're right. Like having going to ChatGPT and saying create this post is not going to give you anything that is authentic or like real pain points, right? And so one of the things that I do is as I'm thinking of stories or as I'm having calls with people, I put it in my notes, right? Of all these little stories, and I will brain dump to ChatGPT and be like, here's this story of how I had this client who wanted to expand her brand and she was trying to think of what the next journey was. And I'll say, I want to tie it to this concept, right? And so I will brain dump, here's a real life story. Here's the concept that I want to get to. How can I tie these together, right? And that's where I use ChatGPT as like a thought partner in how I create these concepts together, right? So you have the
Mm-hmm.
authenticity of your real life story and your thinking, but pulling it into a cohesive story is kind of the brainchild behind it, right? Because they're going to map it out into something that is able to be tangible and bring people through the story.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is that like we have to, for marketing, I believe that we have to be the origin. And I think
Yes.
that's where a lot of people are missing the mark, is that because they're so addicted to pumping out as much marketing as possible. And you're also rewarded on some platforms for doing that. Like the more you post, the more people you can get in front of. And I think that's a tricky, again, really short-sighted approach of like, I know there's like social media people and like behind the scenes, what they're teaching is like post 3 times a day. And I'm like, absolutely fucking not. Like, no, like that's a full time job.
Yes. Need a person
I
for.
just, exactly. And so I think, like, is there a way in your processes when you're working with clients, what have you found to be able to still tap into them being the origin if you're being the creator or implementer for them?
Yeah, I think it's finding that that way that you can work with people, but having them be the origin story, right? Like if you are using a agency or something, you need to have truth in what your experiences are and how you see the perspective of your industry, right? So how can you bring in these unique perspectives, which is your authenticity, that's your authority, and bring it to life in a way? So I think whether that's like documenting these stories as they happen, or it's, you know, coming up with the different perspectives or angles or pain points of your client customer, and feeding them to someone else to produce. Understanding, I think, what your take is and pulling in these real authentic stories are really the differentiator, right? Versus it feeling
Mm-hmm.
like just an agency that's mass producing content that is feeding the algorithm. But you're right. Like there are so many ways that you can. I think the benefit of having someone else do it is to be able to turn these stories into 3 pieces of content, right? So you can have one story and create a whole spread of different ideas based on that same angle. And that's really where I think having a social media manager or an agency is going to help you expand the content, because everyone thinks that they are talking about the same thing way too much, but no one remembers, right? Like you and your team are the only ones that are going to see this message every time. So
Mm-hmm.
talking about it more often is actually a good thing, because it's going to start to resonate more and they're not going to be like, you already told that story, right? And
Yeah.
so I think it's having those stories and then having someone be able to expand it into all these different angles and different mediums and different ways to cut up a story into more content for you.
Yeah. And I love the honesty around that, because I think what happens is I think a lot of people, because they're busy, especially for my clients, what they want is they want to completely hand off marketing.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that there's a point that I have reached in my experimentation with different types of marketing hires, different structures, that that doesn't work. Like completely taking the founder
Mm-hmm.
out will never produce.
Mm-hmm.
If the goal is for, which I would hope, if you're spending money on marketing and ads and stuff like that, it's like you obviously want that to produce a result for you. And so I think we also need to change our expectations around being a part of our marketing. And especially now, like I'm such a believer in, like, regardless of what your brand is, like having a personal brand and having your thought leadership and showing your face as the founder, whether you have a team of 3 or a team of 300,
Mm-hmm.
like for closing the trust gap too. So I'm curious to know from you, are like, what are your marketing icks? What are your, like, okay, if you're going to be successful with your marketing, if you want your marketing to feed your sales, don't do this.
Gosh. I think my biggest ick are really having no opinion, right? Where you're trying to appeal to everyone and having just vanilla, right? I think there was such a big push for this like beige brand that just felt so like boring, right? And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people are playing this safe role because they feel like it's this aesthetic, right? Of like being the clean girl look, right? And like not having an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a huge ick. Another one is mean girl marketing. I really don't like that, because I feel like I have been in like I think putting other people down to grow is not the way to do it, right? And I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand people that are saying like stop doing this, or like you're going to like it's kind of funny that I'm icking on mean girl marketing, but the idea that you have to do things a certain way, and mean girl marketing of bullying people into the way that you do it as being the solution, because there's never one right answer, right? There's plenty of it, but having your own perspective I think is the way to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with all of those things. I always tell people, I'm like, just instead of like, if you see something that's like triggering for you and you're like, you should not be doing this, like talk about what you should do. Talk about what your opinion of like that, if you see somebody doing something in sales that you think is unethical, talk about how to sell ethically, right? Like
Yes.
turn that
Yes.
into positive positive change
Yes.
and show your perspective, like you said. So,
Yes. There's
what do
way
you
too much
think?
negativity in the world. So let's just focus on the positives.
Seriously. And like we know too that like our brains are so attracted to that because they're wired for negativity
Mhm.
bias that like being a positive light is like disruptive, right? Which is crazy to say, but it's so true. Like look at people arguing all day on Facebook about politics.
Right.
I'm like, please get a job.
Stop. Yeah.
Like what are we doing here? But so here's the question on the other side of that is what do you think? Because like I always tell people I'm like it's messaging, marketing, sales. That's the funnel. That's how it works. If something's not working in any of these areas, like it always goes back to your messaging. So we know that we have to have really good messaging. We know we have to know our client. We have to think about the customer journey, right? We have to use that to develop our marketing. And then our marketing should be feeding our sales funnel. I think the problem is that people separate these three things.
Yes.
So in your opinion, what do you think is either missing from these areas? Like if somebody says, okay, I want my marketing to feed my sales funnel, I
Mhm.
want to see an increase in sales, where are you looking? What are you looking at and what are you doing?
Yeah, I think you're right. Everyone is looking at them in silos, right? And so they think they're trying to solve one piece of the puzzle. And so that's usually where I'm like, let's take a step back and figure out what we're actually solving and what the customer problem is, because a lot of times what you think is the problem is not the problem. But if you are looking at your marketing driving sales, then what is the customer problem you're trying to solve, right? Because I think that I always go back to what is that? What is the actual thing that is looking them in the face and bothering them today that is going to make them move, right? Not what you think the answer is. And sometimes you have to take a little bit of an exaggerated path to get there. But how can you solve what they think is the problem and get them to your solution in a better approach that will appeal to them versus what you think is the solution?
Hmm.
Right? It's like everyone wants to buy the diet pill, they don't want to do the exercise. Like, how can you get them to the solution that they want by meeting them where they're at?
Yes. Yeah. And that's such a great way to put it to where I've always said, like, sell them what they want and give them what they need, you
Yes.
know,
Yes,
because
exactly.
we think differently. Like, we think we're like, okay, I want to lose weight. I want the pill. When really what we know is we need better nutrition, better habits, better boundaries. Like, all of those things
All of the
are
things that,
involved.
and they know that, right? Like, you probably know that you need some sort of strategy or some sort of like background work, but you want the quick win solution, right? Like, you
Yeah.
want the fast wins. So it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. All of my clients are like, I want to keep growing. I want to have this financial freedom. I want to work less hours. That's what I want. And I'm like,
Yes.
well, this is this is how we get it. We got to start digging in to all the infrastructure of your business because like is it actually set up for that, right? Like if your
100%.
business is crushing you behind the scenes, looks really pretty on paper. I don't care if you're making multi-millions. If you're
Yeah.
like barely breathing, it doesn't matter.
Right. Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
okay. So tell me this. If you had to narrow it down to top 2 to 3 things that you think should be included in our marketing to make it help us get better results, what would
Mhm.
those things be?
Top things in your marketing. First, I think probably everyone that I work with is doing too much. So the number one thing that I think that people need to do is scale it back and really like take a step back and look at what is actually moving the needle and what you're doing that is just kind of for funsies, right? Because
Yeah.
I think, a lot of people don't have what they're doing attached to their goals, right? Or they are doing marketing activities, but it's not mapped to their goals. So I think that is probably the biggest thing is how, if you can go through your marketing and identify what goal you're trying to reach with each of your tactics, start there and whittle down what you actually need to do. Because I think there are so many people that are like, will come to me and like, what else can I do in my marketing? And it's usually the answer is stop doing so much and focus on the good stuff that's actually moving the needle. And then we can add once we're comfortable, once we need to grow. So I think that's my biggest takeaway for people is like map things to a goal. We're not
Okay.
like marketing should be part of that bigger picture, right? Like how to
Mhm.
make sales, you need to attach your marketing to goals to get you to those sales.
Yeah, and like quality over quantity
Yes.
in a world where all these platforms are telling you to post more and more and more to feed
Mhm.
the visibility. That's what everybody thinks like visibility is the answer. I'm like, no, because I'm married to somebody who has gone viral 8 million times, has 120,000 followers, and he has a mixed audience of people that like, yes, he's been able to translate that into business opportunities, but it's like, it's not ideal, right?
Right.
It's like
Right.
people think that like visibility is, and then I'm like, even with ads, right? People rush to that. They're like, okay, I need more people at the top of funnel, so I'm just going to do ads. But I'm like, no, because then you're going to spend a bunch of money. Don't have your messaging right. Nobody knows what the fuck you're even selling. Stop.
Yeah.
It's really just like stop chasing the quick fix. And I also think, to your point, nobody wants to look at metrics, but like data doesn't lie.
Yes. Data will tell you very fast what's working and what's not.
Right. Right. So like don't be afraid to look at your data. I love that point though of just like make sure that like reverse engineer what's the goal? Is this actually feeding the goal? If not, like you're wasting your time or
Yeah.
starting to ask the questions of like why is it not feeding the goal?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I've had clients that are like doing YouTube channels, and I'm like, well, what are we trying to do with this YouTube channel? And they're like, I just want a YouTube channel. And right? Like let's make sure that what we're
Yeah.
spending our time on is actually like driving something. So, yes.
So true. It's so true. Well, I'm so appreciative of your time today and all of your golden nuggets and
Yeah.
just like so much good stuff here for marketing and just giving all of our listeners so much to think about to better themselves. So before we hop off today, tell us like where can people find you? What's the next step if they're interested in talking to you?
Yeah. So I am at Purple Sky Strategy on Instagram, and that is the best place to find me. And I also am just launching a private podcast. So it will be
Fun.
a little bit of a mini series, and it's a little bit behind the scenes of kind of what my experience is with big brands and how I translate that to small brands as well.
That's amazing. Well, send us the links for everything. We'll put those in the show notes for you. And a reminder to all the listeners that if you have not gotten your ticket to City Girls yet, we still have 4 cities that are coming. So we are going to be in Charlotte, we're going to be Atlanta, we're going to be in Dallas, and we just recently also added Nashville. So you can join us for one of those cities. Jordan, I'm going to send you a special link for
Yes,
being a guest if you would like to join us in any
I
of
would
those
love
cities
to.
as well. And thank you so much again. This is like,
Yeah.
so the timing again was great on this, is where I'm like, I'm having all these marketing conversations. Obviously, my marketing right now, just like getting rid of that team member is a whole thing.
Hard.
So I might DM you to pick your brain on and try to figure out what exactly I need too. So thank you
Absolutely.
again for
Yeah.
everything. And we will talk to you soon.
It was great chatting. Thank you so much.